Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaisavamstra Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paridana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamstra Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kantana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Krupa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyabari Paschata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, welcome to this continued study of the Bhagavad Gita. So, today we'll be discussing from chapter 2, verses 38 through 53. So just a quick review from last time. So we saw Krishna upend all of Arjuna's reasons for not fighting the war. And in the first discussion, it was around compassion. And Krishna indicated that actually if Arjuna was really compassionate towards his guru and grandfather and others, he would kill them on the battlefield, because by doing so he would free them from so much future suffering, cleanse them of their sins, and open the doors to the heavenly planets. So if he was really compassionate, it would lead him to fight. When Arjuna's statement about no happiness from winning, he said actually, Krishna said that you'll achieve great rewards for doing your duty. Again, speaking on the Karma Kanda platform, that by doing one's duty, one is elevated to the higher lives and higher positions. And you will not have to encounter the infamy, the shame of having fled a battlefield, which is unbearable for Kshatriya. So actually by fighting, you'll get happiness. By not fighting, you'll actually suffer greatly. Then on the platform of sin, Arjuna thought it would be sinful to kill his elders, but Krishna said, no, actually it is sinful not to do your duty. You have a duty as a Kshatriya to protect, and so you must do your duty under guidance of Shastra. And so that argument was turned upside down. Degradation of society was another reason Arjuna presented. And if you abandon your duties, others are also going to abandon their duties. And so then really society will falter. And finally, indecision. So based on this, it's clear as day what should be done. And of course, the reason it was unclear to Arjuna at the beginning of this conversation was his viewing the situation from the platform of I am this body. As we have been discussing, whenever there is fear and anxiety and stress and concern, it is always 100% a fact that we are looking through that situation from the lens that I am this body, and forgetting that actually I am spirit soul. And we are currently in a great humanitarian situation, which is a profound reminder to all of us that we are not this body. And while there is great fear and stress and anxiety, It is very pronounced on the bodily platform in today's environment with this situation that we are facing. But it is a good and stark reminder that we are not this body. Of course, that is not a license to act irresponsibly on the bodily platform, and certainly everyone is encouraged to take appropriate precautions to protect the body due to the virus that's amongst us, but understanding that we are not this body, and this body is but a vehicle to render service to Krishna. And so, again, this bodily platform is what leads to all of our fear and stress and anxiety. So, like Arjuna, who was uplifted by Krishna's instructions, understanding his spirit soul, we can also uplift our consciousness by approaching this Bhagavad Gita, and so we'll continue doing so today. So now in this section of Bhagavad Gita, and in a couple of slides, I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of where we've gone and also conclude just to sort of show the flow of this chapter 2. But now we are moving towards Buddhi Yoga. And in Buddhi Yoga, we're going to see, some very Prabhupada's commentaries kind of move us towards this topic of bhakti, and they're very close, and we will make the distinction ultimately, but we won't harp on that in today's discussion, but ultimately we will draw the distinction of Buddhi Yoga versus Bhakti Yoga. But for all intents and purposes, we can understand them to be very similar and almost the same, not quite. And Srila Prabhupada is speaking about Bhakti Yoga primarily, and we'll discuss why in a moment. So again, the chapter begins with Arjuna's surrender, and Krishna chastises Arjuna for his poor thinking, and then he moves to this jnana platform, speaking about spirit soul. And as we talked about in the 13th verse, this is the foundational understanding of everything we want to do. But if the foundation is faulty, then everything else we learn from that point forward has cracks or flaws. You may build a very beautiful home with amazing, granite countertops and beautiful floors and wonderful amenities and all of that. But if that whole construction sits on a faulty foundation, it is all going to fall apart ultimately. Right? So the knowledge we're going to acquire from here forward is built on this foundation of I am not this body, I am spirit soul. And just like if you're doing a multi-step math problem, and in the first step you put 1 + 1 = 3, all the rest of your math that you do, even the most advanced calculus and geometry, but on that foundation of 1 + 1 being 3, your answers will be wrong. Right? So like that, Krishna established a very important foundation for us in the beginning, that we are this spirit soul, we are not this body. Although Krishna also get it, even if you believe in the body, you should still fight. But of course the prime goal of that section was to discuss that. Then he moved to a lower platform, this Karma Kanda platform, and explained how even if you're just looking for material happiness, it's a win-win situation for you. If you win the war, you're going to enjoy the kingdom. If you lose the war, you're going to go to the higher planets by having done your duty. So either way, it's a win-win situation, right? So, and of course, the 5 arguments were turned upside down. So now in the 38th verse, we begin, or we're not quite in Buddhi Yoga, but we'll consider it there. It really begins in the next verse, but for all intents and purposes, it begins the path leading towards it with this statement by Krishna, who says, "Do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by doing so you shall never incur sin." Okay? So Krishna is telling how to work without sin. What causes this bondage? It is attachment. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, fight without attachment. And that leads to no sin. As soon as we are attached to the results, then we have to take the reactions from that work. Right? So when we work in proper consciousness, there is no good or bad reactions that will bind us. And we'll see this topic now being discussed over and over and over again, almost as if we saw so many different verses on the topic of the spirit soul, and we're not this body. We're going to see this repetition of this very important point, that, what is the right consciousness for us to renounce the fruits of our work. But it's not so easy, this sense of proprietorship. So Krishna is going to speak about it repeatedly. And what does this detachment mean? It means we are not worried about happiness or distress, loss or defeat, gain or victory. If you read Srila Prabhupada's Markina Bhagavata Dharma, it's such a beautiful composition, one of the most extraordinary writings of Srila Prabhupada. And he writes so wonderfully in that poem, again, meant not really for public consumption. We were fortunate later to see it. But in the deepest of his realizations, he prayed to Krishna, make me a success or a failure as you like. Now, how many of us have prayed to Krishna like that? We say, make me a success as we like. But Srila Prabhupada shows us the mood. He says, make me a success or a failure as you like. So very important, and we'll talk about this equanimity coming up in a few verses. So this point that Krishna is making now here is actually opposite to what Krishna said earlier about, hey, fight to get happiness, right? Because at that point in those prior verses, Krishna was speaking on a lower platform. He's saying, if you want happiness, fight the war. But now he's saying, do your fighting without considering happiness or distress, because he's trying to now elevate Arjuna's consciousness, right? Bring him to a higher platform. And what is the ultimate goal? He is going to bring him to the platform of working only to please Krishna. And why does he want to bring Arjuna to that platform? Because this is what will give Arjuna the highest happiness. Right? So the ultimate goal is to work with the exclusive goal of what pleases Krishna. And when one does so, they have no other obligation, no debt to anyone. As Srila Prabhupada quotes in this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? So this is the ultimate goal that Krishna is going to bring Arjuna to. Srila Prabhupada is commenting in the purport about that. So this detached work is very, very important, because by doing so, again, there's no reactions. And Srila Prabhupada used to always give the example of the army soldier. The army soldier, when working under the direction of the government, if he kills people in battle, there is no reaction. In fact, there might be some awards and medals. But if that same army soldier, with the same weapons given by the government, the same training, kills somebody on his own accord, then he may be put in jail by that same government. Because in the first instance, he was working under the direction of the government. In the second instance, he was working under the direction of his own intelligence and false ego. So, like that, Prabhupada used to give the explanation that when we work under Krishna's instructions, then there is no reactions. That reaction is Krishna's, just like the government takes the reactions of our work in the situation of the army soldier. So, now there's detachment. There are different types of detachment. There is the detachment from matter. That is material detachment. I abstain from matter. But there is also the spiritual attachment, the attachment to Krishna, that also leads to detachment from matter, but it brings one to a higher position of attachment to Krishna. And of course, that attachment can be in the form of different realizations of Krishna, from the Brahman level to the Paramatma level, and ultimately to the Bhagavan realization. And Krishna is going to bring Arjuna to that highest platform of detachment, which is accomplished by full attachment to Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is where Krishna is going to take Arjuna in this journey to the ultimate and highest consciousness. So this right here, we're speaking about is still on the Karma Yoga platform, because Krishna is referring to doing your duty, right? And again, I'll draw the distinction in future in discussions as well as a little bit later. But just specifically here, this verse is being spoken on the Karma Yoga platform. Now, Srila Prabhupada is speaking about bhakti. Do what Krishna wants you to do, right? That should be our consciousness. And this is the great mercy of Srila Prabhupada, because he knows that Krishna is going to speak about bhakti much later in the Bhagavad Gita. And so, in case we don't make it beyond chapter 2, Srila Prabhupada is making sure that we understand that the ultimate goal is to come to bhakti. So while this verse is speaking about Karma Yoga, Srila Prabhupada in his purports and commentary is speaking primarily about bhakti, which will be discussed a little bit later by Krishna. But that is the reason that Prabhupada is speaking and writing in this way, so we can understand and not confuse the topics, because when we first read these verses, we may be thinking that the verse itself is speaking about bhakti, but technically this is being spoken on the Karma Yoga platform. Okay, and I should preface this discussion today that we're going to cover these topics over a few times, including in chapter 3, so because they're a little bit technical and may not fully penetrate on the first discussion, but they will by the time we get through it. Okay? So now I wanted to just show a little schematic here to help us understand these different topics of karma kanda and karma yoga and nishkam karma yoga and jnana yoga and buddhi yoga and bhakti yoga and whatnot. And so we've got this diagram that shows. So the first thing that Krishna spoke about was this jnana yoga, right? So this is where he was kind of in the middle of this yoga ladder, and then he spoke about this karma kanda section. Right, this is actually not even on the yoga ladder. It's called step 0. We're actually on the ground if we're thinking about an actual ladder. We have not yet stepped on the first rung of the ladder. Karma kanda is not part of the yoga ladder, so it's considered step 0. And then we're seeing this buddhi yoga, which we've kind of grouped in with bhakti yoga because it is very, very close, right? So let's discuss just briefly now karma kanda. This is what Krishna spoke about after discussing jnana yoga. And he said to Arjuna, if you want happiness, you should do your duty as a Kshatriya, and due to the Varnashram system that's established, you'll enjoy the rewards of having done your duty. Right? So karma kanda is basically, we do certain prescribed activities for the specific desire to achieve some sense gratifying results. So it is called regulated sense enjoyment. I do an activity, but I'm following some prescribed duty in Shastra, but for the goal of achieving some sense gratification. That is karma kanda. It is better than non-regulated sense enjoyment. Hey, I'll do whatever I want. That carries, so many sinful reactions. Whereas this regulated sense enjoyment carries, these material rewards. So, virtually most of the Vedas, 96%, is what our acharyas comment on, deal with this regulated sense enjoyment, this karma kanda process. And the goal of it is to build our gradual faith towards Krishna consciousness. Because the world is so much in the mode of passion and ignorance, that this is sometimes a good starting place for the general public. Now, Krishna is ultimately going to tell Arjuna to go directly to bhakti and skip this gradual process, but that is the purpose of it. So this karma kanda process contained within the Vedas, think regulated sense enjoyment, still sense enjoyment, but it is not yoga, because yoga begins when we begin to detach from the fruits of our work. Right? So that is the delineation point. When do we surrender the fruits, right? So now Krishna is going to elevate the discussion and get to Arjuna to work, do action or karma, but in a detached manner. And that is this karma yoga, this first rung of the ladder. This is step one, renouncing the fruits of one's labor, right? And the the reason it's becoming yoga is because there is a surrender of the fruit to Krishna, right? So we do our activity, we do our duty based on our qualities that we've acquired from the modes of material nature, and we do it for a higher purpose. There is a transcendental goal, and thus we surrender the results of the labor. So we're still attached to the duty. We want to do what we want, but we're unattached to the result. So at this point, we don't yet know who is God. We don't have Bhagavan realization, but we know we are not the doer, right? So we don't exactly know spirit soul yet as well. That's coming in the next level, which is jnana. But we have the idea. So there are, Nishkam Karma Yoga, which Borijan Prabhu explains in the Surrender Unto Me, is a subdivision of Karma Yoga. And this Nishkam Karma Yoga means there are no desires for the fruit. There is Sakam Karma Yoga, which means one has desire for the fruits. But in Nishkam Karma Yoga, there is no desire for the fruits. And within Nishkam Karma Yoga, there are two subdivisions further. One who is detached from the fruits, knowing that we are not body and spirit soul, and one who detaches, knowing something about the Supreme Lord. So not yet full realization, but something. That second type of Nishkam Karma Yogi is very close to the Bhakti Yogi, the one practicing devotional service. So it's a far superior position within Nishkam Karma Yoga. Right? So if just knowledge, I am not this body, but not yet leading to Krishna, then one stays at this lower rung of level. But if one knows Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is the ultimate goal, one will very quickly move towards Bhakti Yoga. Right? So again, this Karma Yoga has some subdivisions, Sakam Karma Yoga, Nishkam Karma Yoga, and we'll work on filling those in as we move forward in the discussion, both in this chapter, but also in chapter 3. We'll discuss this in great detail again. So the next level from Karma Yoga is Jnana Yoga. So here, one through intense meditation and study of Shastra, Vedanta, begins to acquire knowledge about the distinction between spirit and matter. Again, this knowledge was not present in Karma Yoga. But in Jnana Yoga, one begins to realize that there's a difference between spirit and matter. And so one often leads to detach from matter, and that leads to an inactive approach. Inactive because one does not want to engage with anything material, because they understand that that will cause karma and bind one. So one avoids matter via inactivity. But there is not yet any service to Krishna because there is no positive attachment. There is negative detachment, but no yet positive attachment. And so it's a very dangerous position to be in because you've renounced all the material fruits, but you have not yet engaged in anything active. And because the soul is active, it is going against the intrinsic nature of the spirit soul. And so there is a challenge of whether one can maintain this level. One must either progress up, or often they will fall back to their material sense and desires. So it is not a place at which one can maintain for long periods of time.
Control of mind.
And at this level, and if you see on the screen here, that at the Jnana level, one has Brahman realization, impersonal realization of the Lord. Then, as we move to Ashtanga Yoga, one acquires Paramatma realization. We'll see this in chapter 6. Krishna will say in the conclusion of Ashtanga Yoga that one can see from within the Supreme Lord. That is Paramatma realization. And Bhakti Yoga, one comes to this platform of Bhagavan realization. So the realization of Krishna increases as one moves up this yoga ladder. And as one goes from Karma Yoga towards Bhakti Yoga, one is acquiring more and more knowledge. So the result of Karma Yoga is one purifies and one acquires knowledge. Two results: knowledge and purification. Knowledge of Krishna and purification of the heart of all of our impurities. So that is the result as one progresses through this ladder. So now we come to then Buddhi Yoga, which is not exactly drawn in this illustration, but it sits between Ashtanga Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. And we'll see more detail in the 5th chapter on this. And it is very close to Bhakti Yoga, so we don't really draw much of a distinction from it. And what Buddhi Yoga is, it is Karma Yoga on the Jnana platform. So Karma Yoga, detached activity with knowledge of the spirit soul. So when you combine the two, one uses their intelligence, their buddhi about spirit and matter, and the knowledge, again from jnana, with activity in a detached manner. So detached action with intelligence, knowing who am I, that is Buddhi Yoga. And again, we'll work to define this a little bit further. And Prabhupada speaks about working in Krishna consciousness, right? So at this level, there's a very subtle difference between Buddhi Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. And the subtle difference is that in Bhakti Yoga, one has a Bhagavan realization, full understanding of Krishna as a supreme person. Whereas in Buddhi Yoga, it is Paramatma realization. So that is a slight and subtle distinction. Again, we will not dwell on this distinction too much, but just for understanding, that is the technical difference between Bhakti Yoga and Buddhi Yoga, is that the level of realization. In Buddhi Yoga, one has realized Paramatma. In Bhakti Yoga, one has realized Bhagavan. And in Bhakti Yoga, again, what is it? It is performing devotional service. We do activity that only pleases Krishna. So we don't care what activity we do it only for the pleasure of Krishna. So in Karma Yoga, we renounce the fruits to Krishna. In Bhakti Yoga, we renounce the fruits to Krishna. So what is the difference? The difference is, in Karma Yoga, one is attached to the activity. I want to do my duty, but I know I should detach the results. But in Bhakti Yoga, the consciousness elevates to, I am not attached to any duty. Whatever Krishna wants me to do, I will do. And, of course, the results are his. So it is, the distinction is when one surrenders. In Karma Yoga, one surrenders the fruit. In Bhakti Yoga, one surrenders the duty and the fruits. Right? So there is no attachment to either duty or results. So this is the distinctions as we get through it. And again, as Srila Prabhupada is commenting in the purports, we draw some distinctions, but ultimately he is speaking to us about the platform of Bhakti Yoga. And know definitively that ultimately Krishna is going to say, abandon all of these steps on the yoga ladder and do bhakti. Right? And he says it's so simple, patram pushpam phalam toyam. Don't think you're not qualified to do bhakti. Anyone can do bhakti. Right? As long as it is accompanied with yome bhakti aparyachati, this love and devotion. Okay? So this is a little bit of the detailed discussion, but this will serve as a good reference point as we carry through the rest of this chapter, but also in chapters 3 and 5. We'll be coming back to this point. So again, don't be so worried if everything hasn't fully registered yet. As we go through this a couple of times, these distinctions, these different levels, and the definitions will make sense. And you can certainly reference this slide and this section of the discussion at a future date. Okay? So let us carry forward. So now we'll discuss the 39th verse, where Krishna formally introduces Bhakti Yoga. Thus far I have described this knowledge to you through analytical study. Now listen as I explain in terms of working without fruit of results. O son of Pratha, when you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of work. So again, what is Buddhi Yoga? Karma Yoga, detached action with knowledge. Knowledge that I am not this body, I am spirit soul. So karma on the jnana platform, working with knowledge of who we are, this is Buddhi Yoga. Right? So Krishna explained the analytical aspects of soul and body for 20 verses in great detail. And from there he convinced Arjuna to fight. But now he is working to an even higher reason of why Arjuna should fight Buddhi Yoga. Right? So the purpose of speaking the analytical study was to bring Arjuna ultimately up to this platform. And at the end, he's going to say, ultimately, give it all up and abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. That is the ultimate platform. But this now is the kind of next level of consciousness that Krishna is building in Arjuna for the reasons of why he should fight. He has already conclusively said on all levels that he should fight, but now for this purpose of understanding, he is introducing this topic of Buddhi Yoga. So Krishna is saying that it is better to renounce the results of your work than to renounce work itself. Right? Because Krishna thinks that the inactive path of jnana is very dangerous because it's very difficult to be inactive. The soul is active by nature, as we've discussed. So Krishna is saying it's better to work, be active, but work on the jnana platform of knowing spirit and matter. So combine the two. Detached work with knowledge is the best course of action because you will free yourself from the bondage of work and simultaneously not fight the nature of the soul. Right? The jnanis try to avoid karma by not doing anything. But the problem is that goes against the nature of the soul, which is to be active. So Krishna is saying, no, you do action, work in line with the nature of the soul, but do it with knowledge so that you avoid the sinful reactions. So kind of getting the best of both worlds, if you will. And that is Krishna's goal here with his Buddhi Yoga. And Krishna will speak directly about Buddhi Yoga in the Chatur Shloki verses of the 10th chapter, where Krishna will say, Dadam Buddhi Yogam Tam. So he says, this Buddhi Yogam, this Buddhi, this intelligence is coming from me. And so we understand that it is only by the mercy of Krishna can one practice this. And we see Srila Prabhupada referencing this in the purport to the 39th verse. Okay? So now in 40, we see one of the benefits of this endeavor. In this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So, what is the benefit of doing Buddhi Yoga? We see right here that in this endeavor, again, we're speaking about fighting in Buddhi Yoga, the results are only gains. There is no loss. Right? Arjuna was fearful of so many losses by fighting, losing his relationships, losing his position, losing his pious nature by incurring sin. So he was fearful of so many losses. But Krishna is saying, in Buddhi Yoga, there is no loss. And not only is there no loss, but there is great gain. And what is that gain that we obtain? Protection from the most dangerous type of fear. Maybe some of us are experiencing some fear now. Well, how to get protection from this? We see here by doing ultimately Bhakti Yoga. Right? So not only is there no loss, but there is a great gain, and that is protection. So Arjuna, do Buddhi Yoga. And what is our greatest fear? It should be that we lose this opportunity to realize Krishna after working so hard to acquire this human form of life. Committing atmaha, killing the soul's opportunity to return back home, as we saw in Sri Ishopanishad. A lot of work has been done to acquire this human form of life, and that should be our greatest fear. And we can get protection from losing this opportunity to go back home, back to Godhead, and awaken this pure love of God in our heart if we begin to practice this process, right? And the second aspect here is that there is no diminution, that the spiritual gains are eternal. All the material gains will ultimately diminish, right? But the spiritual gains never diminish. Whatever we gain from karma kanda will ultimately be lost. We'll enjoy for some time, but then we'll come back. Our material intelligence, we have to learn 2 plus 2 all over again in our next body. But the gains from Buddhi Yoga, they remain with us forever. Wherever one leaves off in Krishna consciousness in this life, they pick up in the next. And Krishna will explain this in more detail in chapter 8. But So not only is there no loss, not only is there a great gain, but whatever we achieve in Buddha Yoga, it is eternally ours. And so that is a great motivator to take to this process of Buddha Yoga. So now we get to this topic of how to practice in this fixed way. So this very famous verse of Vyavisayamika Buddhi, Krishna says, those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. So Krishna is introducing this topic of Vyavasayatmika Buddhi, a very important term, about being fixed in intelligence. Buddhi, this means fixed intelligence, one-dimensional, resolute in purpose. So Srila Prabhupada talks about, faith in this purport very nicely. We won't discuss too much about that. But what does it mean to be one-dimensional or fixed? It means that one is only working to satisfy Krishna. There's only the spiritual activity. There are no, balance of my material and spiritual activities. One is simply working for the pleasure of Krishna. And one has faith that all will be served by doing that one thing, devotional service. Like watering the root of the tree will nourish all the branches. By doing bhakti, one has faith that all the needs, all the necessities of life will be met. And so one does not have to deviate their consciousness to any other place, but simply pleasing Krishna. But it takes, of course, some faith in order to do that. Right? And so Srila Prabhupada writes in this purport a very beautiful statement that is worth, writing on a sticky note and putting, all over our house, which says, a strong faith that by Krishna consciousness one will be elevated to the highest perfection of life is called Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. This strong faith that Krishna consciousness will take one to perfection of life, that is intelligence. So even in the midst of right now, we may be wondering what to do and how to. It is this faith in Krishna consciousness that will achieve perfection. And if we have that faith, then one has this intelligence. So it's a very, beautiful and powerful statement. Right? And we know that if one is not fixed, what is the downside of being irresolute or multi-purposed? Well, we make much slower advancement, right? My energy is diversified. If I'm pulling in two directions, I can't commit, just like a child. A child who has a strong desire for good grades and a strong desire to play video games. So if one's divided attention is between studying and video games, we know the result will be limited. But if one has strong desire for good grades, then they'll become one-dimensional. So this strong faith that Krishna consciousness is the only means of perfection is what allows one to become this fixed and irresolute in purpose. Right? And so this is important. So Srila Prabhupada talks about faith, and he defines faith as confidence that by doing a certain activity, the desired outcome will manifest. Maybe our faith, may be shaken. We have so many concerns, but if we have actually faith in Krishna, that by doing devotional service, the desired outcome will come, then we have this strong conviction. So in the final aspect of this purport, Prabhupada comments on Vishnava Chakravarti Thakur's comments on this fixed intelligence. And he defines that this Vyavasayamika Buddhi, it means to be fixed on the instructions of the Guru, the spiritual master, because the Guru is directing one to serve and please Krishna. So the best kind of intelligence is when it is used to serve Krishna, and the spiritual master is guiding one in that, is guiding the disciple in that endeavor. And so this fixed intelligence means to be fixed on the instructions of the spiritual master, accepting nothing else in life but the order of Guru. This is Vyavasayamika Buddhi. And we know that Srila Prabhupada was very, inspired by this commentary by Vishnava Chakravarti Thakur when he read this to, take to the instruction his spiritual master gave to preach this message to the West, of which we are all the extraordinary beneficiaries of. So we're very grateful for Srila Prabhupada's inspiration and Vyavasatmika Buddhi intelligence in following the orders of his spiritual master, and we are certainly the beneficiaries of such. So this is this topic, and sometimes it can be a little even like intimidating. How can they be fully surrendered to the Guru's instruction? What happens if it doesn't? What if if the order can't become fulfilled? Just like when one enters into married life, one has this sometimes this fear of what if it's not bliss and perfection? Of course, none of us are experiencing that, but we have this concern. Well, similarly, this may happen in devotional life, but as we practice bhakti, one will understand how this is the ultimate perfection, and it is the end-all, be-all. It is the root of all things one needs, and we'll see this topic again in a couple of verses when Krishna speaks about the well and the large reservoir of water. But again, I'll just end by reading this opening line of this purport again. A strong faith that by Krishna consciousness one will be elevated to the highest perfection of life is called Vyavasayamika Buddhi. In our times of doubt and fear, this is a very nice a line to read by Srila Prabhupada to give us faith that Krishna consciousness is the only path of perfection. Okay? Could continue for hours on this, but we'll move forward. Now, Krishna is going to speak. Now he's transitioning. So he has spoken about doing Buddhi Yoga. There's no loss or diminution. Defining what it is. And now he's going to speak about to Arjuna, don't be tempted by these lower ideas, this karma kanda process. Don't be tempted. So he is going to speak about the Vedas. And so Krishna speaks in the 42nd and 43rd verses. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, result in good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification, opulent life, they say there's nothing more than this. So again, now Krishna is trying to warn Arjuna, don't be tempted by this lower philosophy of the Vedas. Now, we may wonder, wait a minute, how Krishna can speak so, somewhat seemingly disparagingly about the Vedas. Remember, he is the author of the Vedas. He wrote them. So he is telling Arjuna, don't be tempted by them. Right? So he has the full authority to speak and to characterize the Vedas appropriately and accurately. No one else can, because he is the author. Okay? So we should understand this commentary in context of who is speaking as the author of the Vedas. Okay? So now the karma kanda process, we talked about that. This is regulated sense enjoyment, for these heavenly pleasures. And Krishna is saying, do duties without attachment for your own material happiness. So the Vedas, as Krishna is explaining here, is saying that it attracts the men of small knowledge. Right? They are attracted to these flowery words. And why? Because these gifts, why small knowledge? Because these material boons, drinking the soma rasa and enjoying celestial heavenly planets and whatnot, those boons, though they seem very attractive relative to where we are today, they are far, 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 far inferior to the bliss and happiness experienced in devotional service. These gifts are very small and they are very temporary. Whereas what one can achieve by Buddhi Yoga and ultimately Bhakti Yoga is far, far superior and eternal. Just like we would say if a child exchanged, had a choice between one piece of chocolate and $100, most children would take the chocolate. We would consider that of small intelligence, because not knowing that they can get something far greater with that $100. Again, I'm using just a mundane example to illustrate the point. Right? So it is not disparaging in the comment, but it is descriptive. And Krishna is giving now Arjuna intelligence that don't be tempted Give up your desires for material happiness. Give up this karma kanda mentality. Though he presented that as a reason Arjuna should fight, he is bringing him to a higher platform and not being tempted by these fruits. Okay? Now Krishna will continue this theme in the next two verses. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. 45. The Vedas mainly deal with the subject of three modes of material nature. O Arjuna, become transcendental to these three modes. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. So, the challenge, the downside of these processes is that the determination, that fixed intelligence, doesn't manifest when one is distracted by material desires. Right? So Krishna is saying, but bhakti is the highest one can achieve, but one cannot get it if they are distracted by the material desires. So one needs to transcend this karma kanda level. It will not lead to happiness. What is the result of all of these karma kanda processes? It'll lead to bondage. We will remain within this material world, tied to the ups and downs. Right? Only limited and temporary results. So Krishna is telling Arjuna directly now, you transcend. These Vedas deal mostly with sense gratification. Yes, it is a process enjoined to allow one to gradually come to the transcendental platform of self-realization. But you, Arjuna, you go directly to the highest platform. Don't take this gradual process. So out of love for his dear friend Arjuna, Krishna is giving him the better option. Yes, this gradual process that's enjoined in the Vedas is available, and we'll see more about this in chapter 3. But out of love, as any friend would give to their friend the best of what they have, Arjuna is receiving the best of what Krishna can offer by this guidance. Hey, don't be distracted. Don't be distracted. It looks nice. It's very flowery. But don't be distracted. And this is the great love and compassion Krishna has for Arjuna, and certainly for all of us as we have the opportunity to receive the same instructions that Arjuna had. And of course, very appropriately, again in this time, Krishna says, be freed from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety. Yes, we may be concerned about safety today, but how to be established in the self. I am spirit soul, serving Krishna, and one can be free from those anxieties. Now in the 46th verse, all purposes served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. So now Krishna is, saying somewhat indirectly, but with this nice analogy, that what is the real and ultimate purpose of the Vedas? To know Krishna. Right? Krishna is going to tell us in the 15th chapter, 15th verse, Vedaisya savar aham eva vedyo, that I am to be known of all the Vedas. And how I can say that? Vedanta krur veda ved eva chaham. Because I am the compiler of Vedanta, then I can tell you what is the ultimate purpose. So the ultimate purpose of the Vedas is to know Krishna. And this is coming from the author himself of the Vedas. Though 96% of the Vedas deal with this karma kanda, this final 4% is the ultimate purpose, and that is to know the self and the relationship with Krishna. Right? So this well analogy is given very nicely, that in the villages we have different wells for different purposes. A well for washing clothes, a well for bathing and drinking, a well for different activities. But if you live near a large reservoir of water, then you can use this single reservoir for all your purposes. Right? So like that, all the topics, all the different things that are enjoined in the Vedas, they can be accomplished by the single action of bhakti, of service to Krishna. Right? So Krishna is the one that can fulfill all needs. Again, that root of the tree or that single reservoir of water. So many different examples and metaphors we'll get to inspire us to have faith that by serving Krishna, all of one's needs are fulfilled. It is the all-in-one process. And when one does bhakti yoga, all of that is achieved in the lower or the previous rungs of the ladder are also achieved. Right? Just like if you have reached, the 6-foot height on a ladder, well, it means you've already achieved the first 1 foot height, 2nd foot height, 3rd foot. All the other lower heights are already achieved. Right? So like that, bhakti includes everything from the other yoga processes, but adds the ultimate, which is loving service to the Supreme Lord. So it is the ultimate, and that is why Krishna ultimately is going to say, Sarva dharma parityaja, abandon all other dharma, and mam ekam, only to me you surrender. Right? I will take care of everything. Ma suchaha, don't fear. Okay, so now we get to the another very famous verse we see on billboards all over India. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. So now the next several verses, Krishna is going to speak about this detachment. It's not so easy, so he's going to speak repeatedly about this importance of detachment. So in this famous verse, many speak very gloriously about doing your duty, but they leave out this most important part of doing your duty, ma paleshu kadachana. You are not entitled to the phal, the fruit of that work, right? So we don't own the fruits. Krishna is saying, do nishkam karma yoga. Do your duty, but be unattached to the fruit. Don't create reactions, right? And why should we detach? Because we are not the doer. Krishna is the doer. The material nature is the doer. Krishna is going to emphatically establish this in the 3rd chapter with the verse Prakute kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ankara vimudatma kartahamiti manyate. He says, you are not the doer. Your false ego may lead you to think you are, but it is actually the prakute, the material nature, that is the doer. Right? So that is why we should detach, because we are not the doer. And though the soul is active, so working is good, but don't create future reactions by attaching to the results. This creates bondage. So instead, again, work in knowledge, buddhi yoga. And importantly, Srila Prabhupada makes 2 important points at the end of the purport, that this, Krishna makes the point in the verse itself as well, is that this non-participation in the battle is also a form of attachment. They know I'm detaching from the battle. No. So aversion is also a form of attachment. So one is attached to the desire not to fight. That is Arjuna's form of attachment. So one must be fully detached to our desires. To say, I want to do this, or I don't want to do that, that I don't want to do is also a form of attachment. And so that leads one to bondage. So, very importantly, Krishna and Srila Prabhupada are pointing that out. And then finally, Srila Prabhupada makes the point again here that inaction also leads to sin because one is avoiding their duty. Now the 48th verse. Perform your duty equipoised, O Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success or failure. Such equanimity is called yoga. So Krishna is saying, while you don't have the fruits of the work, you should be equipoised. Do your duty, but abandon attachment to success or failure. This is this, yoga that we're speaking of. If we do it detached, again, no binding results. And this equipoised is very important. So Krishna is instructing and introducing now what is our mentality we should have. We should be peaceful, whether there is success or failure. It is such a liberating piece of consciousness, actually. We worry so much time about whether our activity will result in success or failure. And Krishna is saying, we have no right to it anyways, so don't worry about it. Just do the best you can. And whatever happens, that is Krishna's. And Srila Prabhupada says so beautifully in this verse, in the purport, he says, gain or victory are Krishna's concern. Another stick-it noteworthy statement. Gain or victory are Krishna's concern. They're not our concern. So we should be equipoised. And this way, one can be very fixed. So don't renounce the work, but renounce the fruits and renounce the attachment to success and failure. And so how to have confidence in this renunciation of fruits? Well, we have to have faith that Krishna will protect us, that Krishna is there in all times. That is a fact. He is there to protect us. But the question is whether we have faith in it. And I think Borijan Prabhu gives a beautiful example of, a child, finds $2 in the street, and a child will come home and give that $2 to his father without any hesitation. The child's entire net worth, that $2, he gives to father. He has no fear. Why? Because child has full faith that father will provide all necessities. Whatever $2 he gives, he's going to receive many, many, many times more in return. Like that, our Supreme Father. When we renounce the fruits to Krishna, well, what our $2 fruits are in comparison to Krishna's entire protection and maintenance of us is. So we should have full faith. Yes, we will be preserved. But giving up this sense of proprietorship of the results is difficult. But Prabhupada writes in the purport, it can be done very simply by Krishna consciousness. By the practice of bhakti, one naturally loses this sense of proprietorship. And actually it is the only way. But Krishna is going to continue speaking about this proprietorship, speaking now about misers. O Dhananjaya, keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service, and in that consciousness surrender unto the Lord. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. So this verse is going to actually lead us to chapter 3. Arjuna is going to ask some questions at the beginning of chapter 3, and it is reference to this verse. He is not going to understand whether Krishna, by saying keep all abominable activities far, does that mean he should renounce the battlefield or stay? So this will serve as the basis for the beginning of chapter 3. So we'll revisit this. But here now, Krishna is speaking about miserly. Who are misers? Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work. They are not very intelligent. It seems reasonable. Hey, I did the work. Shouldn't I enjoy them? But actually, and we see, the banks. The banks are always encouraging us. Take out a loan. You're working so hard. Build yourself a new bathroom or a new kitchen or an extension in your house or buy a car. Enjoy the fruits of your work. But it is not the case. We are not creating anything. We are simply using the Lord's resources to create. So the one who wants to enjoy is not very intelligent. So it's called miserly because they have great intelligence, great ability to work in a higher way. But due to this miserly weakness, one simply tries to enjoy the fruits of their so-called labor. But again, they are not the doers, so one is not using their intelligence to the full potential, and thus are called miserly. One who is miserly has great resources, but does not use them. So Krishna is saying one who tries to enjoy the fruits of their work is a miser. So now, in these final set of verses, we're going to see what is the result of renouncing the fruits. So Krishna has introduced the topic of Buddhi Yoga so far, and said it is a better way to go, that you'll not incur reactions and all this. But now we're going to get more detailed. He gave us the specific importance to renounce the fruits, and now we'll see in these next verses the specific results. So in 50, a man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad reactions, even in this life. Therefore strive for yoga, which is the art of all work. So this is the perfection of all work. Right? So the initial result is detached work leads to no reactions, both good and bad. Again, no reactions means I don't have to come back and take another birth. Right? And in Surrender Unto Me, we see, quote, the art of work is to act in such a way that we become free from both good and bad reactions. Often conventional wisdom is, just do good things. Well, the real art of work is to be free of all reactions. So Arjuna's fear of sin now is irrelevant. If he does detached work, there is no sin. Right? So the jnanis try to become free from reactions by not doing anything, by renouncing work, but that same outcome is possible by an easier process of working in right consciousness. And why it's easier is because it goes in alignment with the nature of the soul, which is to be active. And we know the jnanis cannot renounce all work. They have to eat, they have to breathe, they have to walk, they have to do certain things. And in those activities, there's some reactions if they are not working for the higher purpose of working for Krishna. Right? Even taking a breath is killing so many living entities. We'll discuss that more. Now 51. What is the ultimate result of Buddha Yoga? We see in 51. The preliminary result, no sins and no good or bad reactions, but now in even ultimate result. By thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work in the material world. In this way, they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain the state beyond all miseries by going back to Godhead. Right? So the ultimate result is attaining this state. And what state is that? The state of Michigan? The state of Hawaii? No. The state is Goloka Vrindavan. The only place where there is no misery. Right? So Krishna is giving proof positive that to become free from all miseries, which is the end goal of the entire universe, of all of us, this is the path, by engaging in devotional service or this Buddha Yoga. Right? So the whole world is full of misery, no matter what type of body you have, Srila Prabhupada says, very nicely, and boy, isn't that true in today's situation. So this is the describe, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary gives a nice, sort of progression of consciousness that detached work, it leads to knowledge of the soul. And when we know the soul, this self-realization leads to know, well, who is my master? Where do I come from? Knowledge of Krishna. And when the knowledge of the soul combines with knowledge of Krishna, it leads one to surrender to the Supreme Lord and render devotional service. And thus one becomes free from the world and enters the Vaikuntha planets. So this is this progression of consciousness from that Karma Yoga to the Bhakti Yoga again. Okay? Now the last last two verses, excuse me. I was anxious. 52. When your intelligence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard, and all is to be heard. Right? This is the benediction we can get. Indifferent to everything else, single-minded. Right? Once come to bhakti, one has no other duties to perform. One becomes indifferent to all the other rites and rituals. Again, we saw in the prior purport that there is no debt or obligation remaining for one who has come to bhakti. So Krishna is saying this very clearly here, that one becomes indifferent to all the other aspects. And that's why he's saying, Ma may come, surrender only unto me. Okay? So that is the next result of this wonderful process, is one doesn't become distracted. So no more reactions, good or bad, attaining the supreme place, and no more worries about anything else. Just do bhakti. So finally, the final result we see here now in the 53rd verse. When your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, and when it becomes fixed in the trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness. Aren't we all ultimately looking for divine consciousness, this peace of mind? Well, this is how it is achieved. We're all searching for it, and here is the answer. When not distracted by the temptations of personal sense gratification and focused exclusively in bhakti, then peace and happiness. So we have to transcend the fruit of desires, This is critical. Working in proper consciousness by doing activity detached from the fruits, knowing I am spirit, soul, and not this body, will ultimately bring us to Krishna through the process of devotional service, and there'll be no need to worry about anything else. Nothing else will be need to known except for the Supreme Lord. So by acting in this way, one will purify and increase knowledge of Krishna, and one will become very situated and settled and fixed in divine consciousness. And this is the highest perfection, right? And the highest perfection of realization is to know that we are the eternal servitor of Krishna, and that one's only business is to serve the Supreme Lord. That is the ultimate perfection of self-realization. We may realize the self that I am spirit soul, but it is not complete. It is complete when I realize that the nature of my soul is to be eternal servant to Krishna. Then self-realization is complete. The Jnanis have partial self-realization. The Bhakti Yogi has complete self-realization. And that is what we are all aspiring for, and that is the result of following these instructions from the Supreme Lord. And so that is our goal of divine consciousness. And now, just a quick summary that of this chapter. We kind of began with it, but Arjuna's, initial reasons not to fight, followed by Krishna's Jnana Yoga, the analytical analysis of spirit and body, soul and body. Then the Karma Kanda platform of a lower reason why to fight, and now ultimately the Buddhi Yoga. Work detached, knowing your spirit soul. This karma plus jnana equals Buddhi Yoga formula. We did a little mathematics today, and we can achieve these wonderful results. And now Arjuna, his mind is really piqued by this idea of divine consciousness. Of course, he's coming from a very turbulent state of mind, very fearful, and so many desires and concerns and anxiety and stress. And so when Krishna speaks of divine consciousness, immediately he's going to say, wait, tell me more. So in the next verse, Arjuna is going to ask 4 questions, and the remainder of this chapter, Krishna is going to answer Arjuna's 4 questions. So this is the structure of the chapter thus far in chapter 2, and from here till the end of the chapter, Arjuna's curiosity and deep interest in this divine consciousness is going to be discussed, and he's going to ask 4 questions, and Krishna will answer them in the remaining last sections of this chapter. Okay? So sorry we went a little bit long today. Please forgive me for that. But that is today's discussion. Any comments or questions today?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandat Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Danvat.
Please accept my humble obeisances, Prabhu. Very nice class, and it's perfectly presented. I'm actually, it's like I don't know when the class is completed. Very nice class.
Hare Krishna.
I only have one humble question, Prabhu. There is nothing else in this session. One is that Krishna, he created himself the Vedas and the Vedic culture. Now you say Krishna himself saying that those are not to be followed for the ultimate goal. Okay. So for this study, we understand for our Bhakti Yoga, but in general, if you see in the preaching purpose outside, it is like we are defaming ourselves. Like we already have the traditional way of following Vedas from many years, decades. And now if we go and say, preach outside saying that don't follow that, come to Krishna consciousness, only follow this one, then what happens is we are kind of defaming our own ancestry, what we followed. So how to handle this kind of preaching?
Yeah, we're not defaming what we are doing. We should not say don't follow the Vedas. What we should say is follow the ultimate purpose of the Vedas. It's a very different statement. Everything we are studying is because Krishna has established very clearly that he is the object of the Vedas, and we're saying follow Krishna. So we are saying follow the Vedas, but follow the ultimate purpose of the Vedas. And so it's just like if you've learned 2 plus 2 in early math, and now you have progressed to geometry, by speaking geometry, you're not defaming 2 plus 2, but you're speaking on a higher platform, right? But it is not derogatory towards 2 plus 2. It's just you're now focused on a higher platform. So we don't say, and it's a good clarification you're making, because we as aspiring bhakti yogis shouldn't speak disparagingly about the Vedas or speak that, but we can speak encouragingly that hey, there's an even higher purpose. Yes, you in the third chapter we're going to see this, how these Vedas are set up to be a gradual progression. But in speaking, we can talk, hey, you are aspiring for good, material benefits. That is so nice and better than just doing unregulated sense enjoyment. It is nice that you are surrendering to a higher power, that you are willing to sacrifice, because it takes yajna to achieve karma kanda. But there's an even more potent yajna. Let me tell you about it. This yajna, Sankirtan yajna, will give you eternal benefits. Yes, what benefits you may desire today, they'll give you some temporary. So in that way, you can, encourage somebody by, where they are, but then give them the higher levels of understanding. So when we preach, we don't want to, say, oh, you're worshiping this devata, I'm worshiping Krishna, I'm superior to you. That is foolish. Right?
It comes in mind, basically.
Yeah.
You don't give a direct tell, but it comes in mind. So that, okay, he is not different. He worship only Krishna. He don't follow others. Like that, comes in a mind usually.
Yeah.
So to get into complete elaborated explanation, it takes time.
Yeah. But we have to. Yeah, that's where we have to develop the command of this information. Why Srila Prabhupada wanted us to study this, because he wanted us to have the command of the whole and then be able to present it in a palatable way. We should not present it in a unpalatable way. And where Srila Prabhupada was so expert, and we can draw upon his mercy to develop this, some fraction of his ability. He knew how much to give based on the person. Right? We cannot sometimes give the full, so then we give what they can digest at that moment.
Yes, perfect.
Right? Yeah. Just like the doctor, when a child asks a doctor, how does food get digested in the stomach? Well, the doctor will give what that child can understand. But then if a medical student asks that doctor how the food is digested, well, then the doctor will give what that medical student can understand. Right? So similarly, and in explaining this, but we don't lose the core essence in any way.
Yeah, we still follow Vedas, even our Krishna consciousness.
Yes, of course.
But we follow many things.
Yeah.
From the deity installation, deity worship, so many things we follow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu Dharma, a beautiful class, a lot to take in today, I think. Information.
Yes.
So, I may just say like a follow-up probably to Prabhuji's question too. Like 97%
96.
Krishna is a compiler, right? 97% of Vedas.
96.
Right. 96, sorry. Okay, I stand corrected. Yeah. So Krishna is a compiler of the Vedas. He is the author. 96% of the Vedas talks about the Karma Kanda, which is supposed to be the preliminary 1 plus 1, 2 plus 3 kind of, if you look into the way we do our mathematics. And then it's just only the 4% where we talk about algebra and geometry and trigonometry kind of thing. So if that's so important, and this is the very core which is supposed to be the highest perfection of life, why only that 4%? Because what's happened is like people are misled with the fact that 96% is the end all and the be all of everything, and they hold on to it and they never even want to look beyond that.
So remember, the people are not misled because of Krishna's composition of the Vedas. People are misled by their own desires. Jnanam smritir jnanam upahanam cha. Krishna is a source of forgetfulness, remembrance, and knowledge. So it has nothing to do with the balance of information there that is leading people to be misled. It may seem that way, but that is not the fact. The fact is that based on our desires, Krishna reciprocates with us in many ways. So the exhaustive and comprehensive section of the Vedas which deal with the karma kanda processes is actually Krishna's mercy, because he is allowing the entry point into this regulated sense enjoyment no matter what our desire is. So there are so many varieties of sense desires. So Krishna has created these Vedic processes that no matter where you are starting from, there's a point you can enter. So but bhakti doesn't take much to explain, right? Krishna is going to discuss it elaborately in chapter 9, most confidential knowledge. Okay, chapter 12, devotional service. A few chapters, the whole is there. But the reason there are so many varieties of yagyas one can perform, it is out of Krishna's mercy that it allows, no matter where you are, a place to enter this progressive process, right? So that is why we see such elaborate. But that is not the source of our confusion. So, and it is our job as, aspiring devotees to, try to share and remove this confusion from that. So that is the structure and understanding.
Okay, Prabhuji, thank you so much. Was it possible that could you get that slide back, that step 1, step 2, step 3?
Sure. This one?
Yes, Prabhuji. I just want to write down some stuff. Thank you.
Yeah. And we'll discuss these topics in more detail. And we're going to discuss these Vedas and the progressive realization and how it actually is a progressive step-by-step realization in chapter 3, right in the early parts of chapter 3, after Krishna speaks about renouncing or not renouncing. Then he's going to speak about yajna, sacrifice, and he's going to introduce these sacrifices, and we'll see again in more detail how these Vedas are set up. So whatever we discussed today about it, again, we'll revisit again. So rest assured, we'll, I think, hopefully conclusively establish, our understanding by the time we get through the middle part of the third chapter.
I have a question, Prabhuji, in this one.
Yes.
Now, devotional service, we know obviously it is the integral part of our bhakti yoga. Now, when we talk about this karma yoga, nishkarma karma and all that, so isn't that also including devotional service?
Bhakti yoga means devotional service.
Yeah. Okay.
No,
but in karma yoga also people are doing some devotional service or no, Prabhuji?
Bhakti means devotional service.
Okay.
Bhakti, very important. So in the beginning of Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada translates bhakti as devotional service, which means one service as an expression of their love, their devotion, right? So bhakti is devotional service. And I'm glad you asked this question, because one, the way we refer to it, we sort of refer to it broadly, but we should understand bhakti is devotional service. That's it. So as soon as Krishna becomes the object of our love, then it is bhakti. So, we sometimes speak, very broadly, oh, I'm doing my bhakti, and, we may be doing worship of some other, personalities, other things. That is not bhakti. Bhakti is devotion and service to Krishna. So in karma yoga, one is renouncing the fruits, but one has not yet understood Krishna. So it is not Krishna Anushilana, right? We see in the definition of pure devotional service. Krishna is not yet the object of that surrendering of the fruits. So that is why it is not devotional service. Right? So now again, in the section of this chapter in the purport, Prabhupada is speaking about devotional service. when Krishna is talking about karma yoga in this purport, he is speaking about devotional service, because he is making sure that we don't get distracted or confused by these other topics. So, but the devotional service is exclusively at this top rung of bhakti. So, and don't mistake the preliminary stages of bhakti as karma yoga. So sometimes we do that. Oh, I just started doing bhakti. I just came to these sessions and now I'm new to bhakti. That's still bhakti. That's not karma yoga, right? Because I'm learning about Krishna. I'm chanting Krishna's names. I'm honoring foods offered to Krishna. I'm reading Krishna's books, right? So that is all within the realm of bhakti, though we may be in the very beginning or early stages of bhakti, right? So that is not karma yoga. We think, oh, I just came, so now I'm in karma yoga, then I'll move to get. No. As we are following Srila Prabhupada, he brought us directly into bhakti, but maybe in the beginning stages of bhakti. And of course, in Nectar of Devotion, we studied Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, Raghunaga Sadhana Bhakti, all the way up. So there are many, beautiful gradations within Bhakti Yoga. But we are all aspiring to be situated in this Bhakti Yoga platform and not performing Karma Yoga or Jnana Yoga or even Ashtanga Yoga.
I think that's so beautiful. Because, that's just, despite all our anarthas and everything, Krishna is actually so merciful, Prabhupada is so merciful that he's helping us skip all the levels actually. Though we may be, at least I would be one person there, but at least there in the Bhakti Yoga, though we're doing whatever devotional service, right? So
it's the greatest fortune we have, that Krishna spoke to Arjuna, because remember, Krishna being so dear to Arjuna is not going to give him something good. He's going to give him the absolute best he has. And that's why Prabhupada writes right in the second chapter about bhakti, because if we don't get past second chapter, he wants to make sure we stay in bhakti. And we are very fortunate that Prabhupada has introduced us to this, and by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what qualification we need to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We don't need any qualification. One may argue, I'm not qualified to do bhakti. That means we don't know. We don't have knowledge. So yes, your appreciation and of your great fortune is a great blessing of Srila Prabhupada. And if we all appreciate it, we'll actually do something with it. So keep that feeling strong in our hearts. We'll make great success.
Thank you, Prabhuji. One more last question. So, denouncing the fruit of one's labor, you said karma yoga. So I'm just trying to understand that but they have not still understood that it is to be surrender has to be done to Krishna. So can we understand that the ones who are donating to the temple cause and other things, they are doing karma yoga? They are serving some fruits there to the temple. Will that be considered karma yoga as an example?
No, if you're surrendering your fruits to Krishna, you are doing bhakti still. But again in the 9th chapter and the 12th chapter, Krishna is going to speak about particularly in the 9th chapter, he's going to say patram pushpam phalam toyam, right? That's like pure bhakti. Then in the next verse, he's going to speak about yat karoshi yadashnashi yat karoshi dadasi yat. If you're have some specific desires, do whatever you want, but still give me the fruits. So he's speaking about these different gradations, but they're all it's again getting a little bit technical, but broadly within the construct of bhakti. The distinction between karma yoga and bhakti yoga is that in karma yoga, one is attached to the duty, but detached from the fruits. In bhakti yoga, one is detached from both the duty and the fruits. So now, again, even in that Yat Karoshi verse I quoted, there's an aspect of karma yoga in it, so it gets a little bit blurred. We won't get too hung up on those distinctions, but just know kind of where our ultimate goal is to be, and how we are trying to progress our consciousness to understand that we were created to be used by Krishna for his pleasure. That is the ultimate. That is the 8th verse of Shikshastakam prayers. Right? That is where we want to bring our consciousness to, ultimately. So we can focus on that. And again, these gradations and these sort of definitions, they're very particular and sometimes not so perfect for us to be able to put them in a particular bucket, though we want to.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you for being our guide and explaining all this things beautifully. Thank you.
Thank you for all your blessings and tolerance of me for all of you devotees. Yes, we have one more question online.
Hare Krishna, we have a question online from Laura Mataji. How do you know if you are entering into an illusion? How do you know if something is real or illusionary energy? How do you avoid delusion?
So, whenever you are with Krishna, you are by definition not in illusion. Right? Krishna gives the example that if you're looking at Maya, you're not looking at me. If you're looking at me, you're not looking at Maya. Right? So as soon as we are in Krishna consciousness, we are by definition not in illusion. Just like with the presence of light, there is no darkness. As soon as there is presence of light, darkness is dissipated. So as soon as there is presence of Krishna, illusion is dissipated. Right? So how to come out of illusion? Krishna is going to say, Daivi Hesha Guna Mai Mama Maya Duraktaya. He says this illusory energy of mine, he calls it divine, is very difficult to overcome. But how to overcome? Mam eva ye prapadyante. That you surrender unto Krishna. Then maya metam tarantite. It becomes very easy to cross beyond it. Right? So in the presence of Krishna, there is no maya. So obviously in day-to-day life, we sometimes fall into illusion, or we struggle to perceive different things. Again, that happens as soon as we come back to the bodily platform. So as soon as we become confused or unclear, remind ourselves, I am spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna. And we'll come out of whatever illusion we had. Arjuna was an illusion, right? Of course, he was put into illusion for our benefit. He was not subject to illusion, but he was simply put there for our benefit. But that's how we can understand. And ultimately, take shelter of chanting the holy names, and Krishna sitting in our heart will remove whatever that doubt that is haunting us, and everything will become clear. And you certainly also can, reach out to, whoever is guiding you in the process of devotional service, and help in some of the more finer details of that. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Thank you for a wonderful class, Prabhuji. I have one question. Is Bhakti Yoga similar to a karma?
Yeah, a karma broadly is working without reaction, right? And so we have seen that Nishkam Karma Yoga or Karma Yoga is also working without action, but Bhakti Yoga is the highest platform of working without reaction. So Bhakti is within a karma, but a karma is a broader umbrella statement that we generally speak of as Bhakti Yoga, but technically speaking, a karma refers to, a couple of different, aspects of this. So, because again, a karma means work with no reactions. That's why it's no karma, no reactions. And so one can do karma yoga and not have any reactions. So. But for our intent and purposes, we understand a karma to be bhakti yoga.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And just as a reminder, we won't get so hung up on the practical differences of karma yoga and jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga, buddhi. We want to understand in generalities and then fixate on the supremacy and potency of bhakti yoga. Okay.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all.
Hare Krishna.
Anything else?
Yeah, Prabhuji, last question. I'm a little confused about what's the difference between Nishkam Karma Yoga and then Bhakti Yoga there. Nishkam is because...
So, again, Nishkam Karma Yoga is within Karma Yoga. So one still is attached to the work, but detached from the fruit. So Nishkam, no desire for the fruits. But there is some desire for the activity. That's why Krishna speaks Yat Karoshi Radashnasti Yat Dadoshi Dadasi Yat. That actual verse is referencing to Nishkam Karma Yoga. So we want to do something, but we're comfortable surrendering your fruits. Whereas in Bhakti, Krishna, you do with me what you like. I have no desires. Whatever you want me to do. You want me to serve you by cleaning the floors? I'll clean the floors. You want me to serve you by cooking for you? I'll cook for you. You want me to serve you by decorating your form? I'll decorate your form. You tell me what you want me to do. That is the pure mood of bhakti. Okay, so that is the difference. When the Nishkam Karma Yogi is developing understanding of Krishna, that gradation, the difference between Nishkam Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga is very small. It is not such a wide or broad distinction. Right? So we talked about the two types of Nishkam Karma Yogis. The first is a lower platform, which is one who knows the difference between body and soul, but doesn't yet have the understanding of the Supreme Lord, or not even close. Whereas a Nishkam Karma Yoga who's approaching knowledge of Krishna, that distinction is very small, very insignificant.
All right, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
And as I mentioned in the beginning, don't worry about complete mastery of all of these. We're going to revisit this several times. So by the third or fourth time, hopefully it'll become, it certainly took me many, many, many times more than it'll take all of you. So just, we have a good understanding now. Rest easy, chant your rounds nicely, serve the Supreme Lord, and in the coming weeks we'll revisit this and solidify and fill in any gaps and holes that may be there in this understanding. Okay, so don't worry. I promise we'll come back to this a few more times.
Our homework may not be perfect then, Prabhuji, because
yes, that is the intent. Struggle through that a little bit. It'll deepen our realizations, and your homework may not be perfect, but Krishna will view it as perfect with your sincere attempts and efforts. That is most important.
Thank you.
Okay, Hare Krishna, everyone. Dandavat pranams. Thank you for tolerating today's discussion, and please forgive me for anything I misspoke or any inconveniences or mistakes made. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna, everyone.